we are not remaking this deed. It is very important to understand this. So what we do is we look at the tradition. We look at the four madhahib because they are at the center of the Islamic legal tradition. And then, for those who are competent and capable, for the ordinary person, they just stick to one scholar. But it does not have to be a particular madhab, it could be a scholar. And they just make taqleed because they don't have the faculty to make their own ijtihad. Even the ijtihad of choosing between the different positions, which is a dependent ijtihad, not an independent ijtihad, which most of the competent people do not nowadays. If you're competent of ijtihad, you're very most likely competent of dependent ijtihad, not independent ijtihad. It is the ijtihad, the dependent of ijtihad is the ijtihad of choosing from the different ijtihads of the earlier scholars. Because we're not about to remake it. We're not about to reform Islam in the sense of reformation, to remake, to reconstruct. Revival is restoration. It is not reformation. So then when you approach any issue, don't approach it like you are starting from scratch, because that is dangerous and reckless. We're not starting from scratch. We're taking the positions of the great scholars. At the center of this is the formal position of the four madhahib. And then those who are competent, they can choose from the four madhahib the position that seems to be strongest, as far as the text of Revelation is concerned, and also to a lesser extent, to a secondary extent. The primary, basically factor here is the text of Revelation, but the secondary factor is suitability and appropriateness for current circumstances. So in this way, and then very rarely do we ever need to depart from the position of the four madhahib. Sometimes most of the fatwa committees in the Muslim world now, they departed from the formal position of the four madhahib concerning the three composite divorce, the threefold composite divorce. Threefold composite divorce. Which is to say to your wife, you are talib bit-thalatha, you are talib to the power of three. And that is, so Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, he sort of gave a lot of credit to the position that Umar radiallahu anhu instigated this in his executive capacity as the Khalifa, not as a change of ruling, because Umar cannot change the ruling. And there are hadiths that it used to count as one during the time of the Prophet ﷺ. Certainly the four madhahib, they do have the reputations of those of this way of thinking, or Ibn Taymiyyah's way of thinking. So the formal position of the four madhahib, they will not be sort of stranded for answers. Yet, what I'm trying to say is, because I'm not getting into the details of this yet, we'll get to this when we talk about divorce. What I'm trying to say is that the fatwa committees and sort of the laws and modern laws in most of the Muslim countries, particularly the Arab countries, particularly the ones that are familiar with their laws, Egypt, Syria, Jordan, those three countries, for instance, in addition to Saudi Arabia, their modern laws upheld the position of Ibn Taymiyyah concerning this. And many of the scholars who would agree with Ibn Taymiyyah on other issues and disagree, they took that position. This is a departure from the formal position of the four madhahib. However, that departure from the formal position of the four madhahib has been adopted by modern laws and many scholars for the following reasons. One, there is substantiation. Otherwise, if there is no substantiation, then there would not be, then certainly that would be sort of like an insult to the Sharia. There is substantiation. And the substantiation that Ibn Taymiyyah provided here is a hadith that's reported by Muslim and others that divorce used to count as one, the threefold composite divorce used to be counted as one during the time of the Prophet and Abu Bakr. And then Umar said, إِنَّ النَّاسَ قَدْ تَتَايَعُوا فِي أَمْرٍ كَانَتْ لَهُمْ فِيهِ أَنَافِرَ وَأَمْضَيْنَاهُمْ عَلَيْهِمْ, that the people are making haste concerning a matter where they should have sort of shown deliberation, so let us force it upon them. 3 divorces counting as 3. So he provided some substantiation. Second, this was the position of a mujtahid imam, Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah. Whether those who agree with him or those who disagree, they still recognize his capacity as a scholar. So this is a position of a mujtahid imam, substantiated. And then there is this need for it, and it is not a position that has been completely abandoned by the Ummah. So it has not been completely abandoned. Not abandoned. And you will find that there have been scholars in the past that supported this position. So substantiated, it is upheld by Mujtahid Imam. It's the position of a Mujtahid Imam who substantiated it from the revelation, from the Wahy. There is a need to take it. And here the need is quite obvious, because if you count the 3 fold composite divorce as 3 divorces, most of the women in the Arab and Muslim world will be out in the street. There is no doubt. So the need is quite obvious. And so it meets those criteria. Without this, we don't basically depart from the position of the 4 imams. Without having these strict criteria, we don't depart from the agreement of the 4 imams. We're not claiming that the agreement of the 4 imams is a consensus. Otherwise, we would have not been able to depart even if there is a need, even if there is anything. If we're saying it's a consensus, we can't, depart from it. We're not saying it's a consensus. Some of the scholars in the past said it is a consensus. We do not uphold this position because the consensus cannot be diluted down to the agreement of 4 scholars, or 4 schools, regardless of their centricity to the Islamic law or in the Islamic law, their central place in the Islamic law. But still, consensus is what the Prophet meant, which is the agreement of all of the scholars of his ummah at one point of time on one particular issue. But because of the importance of, the importance of consistency, the importance of integrity of the law, we do need to uphold the position of the 4 imams. What you can do is within the four imams, some people can become too strict and whatever their particular school says, then that's the end of the world. But what you can do is within the positions of the four imams, there is a lot of good room for maneuvering, so that you could choose the position that seems to be more in conformity with the revelation and wahy and suitable for the times. That is within that circle for schools. And when we're talking about four imams, we're not talking about four people decided for us what our religion is. We're talking about four schools, thousands of scholars in all disciplines and all fields, transgenerational, and in all disciplines and fields, basically constructing the tradition, the legal tradition for us. These are not for individuals. Imam Abu Hanifa himself had 40 students. They were 40 scholars sitting with him when they deliberated on various issues, and they issued fatwas concerning various issues. They would discuss them, they would debate them back and forth, and then they would write them after they have found. So we're not talking about the singular effort of four individuals, calling the shots for us, or basically making the decision for us concerning our deen. We're talking about thousands of the most eminent scholars across the generations, across different fields and different disciplines of Islamic knowledge that did this for us. But within the four schools, you have this room, you have this flexibility. And we limit ourselves to the four schools unless there is a need for a particular position of another mujtahid imam that was also substantiated by the revelation and never abandoned by the ummah. So when we talk about women serving, the problem that I have with, and I'm not talking about any particular incident or any particular person, but the problem I have with many preachers or like many teachers, this is not because I'm a judge over them. They may also have problems with me, but I certainly, based on my own thinking, I have a problem with doing it from scratch. It is basically when you say that this is the position because the proofs are such and such, and then you ignore the whole tradition. You say that these are the positions, and these are the positions of the scholars, these are the positions of the madhahib, these are the positions of the mujtahid imams, and of these positions, this one seems to be. In this way, when you say this, you will familiarize the people with the disagreement. Here you're saying that the correct position is that the woman will have to serve her husband. If you say this and then you add a period at the end, then there is no other valid position. How do you meet Allah on the Day of Judgment if you basically consider the formal position of the four madhahib an invalid position? Not only that it is not the stronger position, it is not worth mentioning. So it is very important that we're not doing this from scratch. So please don't. The first thing you do, go to the four madhahib, understand what they said about various issues. Do you know that the congregation of dua that is made after Salat al-Farida, after the Fard prayers, people make congregation of dua. The Hanafis dislike this, and very ironically, it is Hanafis who, but traditionally, the people, the madhab that dislike this, and rightfully so, because it does not have, it has not been reported from the Prophet ﷺ or the companions. Shafi'ee had like a very good writing on this issue, where he showed that people have made this into an obligation where it has no roots whatsoever in the practice of the Prophet ﷺ and his companions. But so that the Hanafis are the ones who dislike this. The three other madhahib, you will find that the three other madhahib approve of it. If you say that this is like a reprehensible bid'ah and then you start to act very angry, and someone goes and reads that the Shafi'is and the Malikis and Hanbalis are all fine with it and they approve of it and they approve of the legitimacy of it, how can we have a discussion? How could you have is that you're telling your followers that the person who does this has no basically legitimacy whatsoever, has no, he's just like making things up on the go. And that will breed resentment, hatred, intolerance between us. We're not going to be. But if I say that this is the position of the four madhahib, and concerning this matter, I side with the formal orthodox position of the Hanafis, not the practice of the contemporary Hanafi. The formal orthodox position, as far as I know, although there is also some disagreement within Hanafi orthodoxy over disliking this, but if you say that this is what I choose, because I don't find that to be, I don't find anywhere in the practice of the Prophet ﷺ or Sahaba that they did this law in congregation, then that is reasonable. So you go to the four madhahib, and then you say that these are their positions, but this is what I choose because it appears to be stronger to me, based on my understanding of the revelation. That is when you're competent enough to do this. If you're not, then you're a muqallid, and then you just follow your scholar or school, and don't bother with tarjih or weighing down on one position or the other. This is how we should all talk to each other, so that there is more tolerance between us. And then when there is like a position that is outside of the four madhahib, then you wait until there is a momentum. As a student of knowledge yourself, you don't uphold the position that's outside of the four madhahib, and you run around and just to be forceful and preach in it until there is a momentum. Certainly, this threefold composite divorce, there is sufficient momentum. If you don't consider the modern laws, which are based in Sharia and taken from the Sharia of countries like Egypt, Syria, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and many other Muslim countries, if you don't consider this to be enough momentum, then I don't know what could be a momentum. But there is momentum here, so that you could, as a student of knowledge, support this and preach it. Not condemn the other position, because you can't condemn the position of the four madhahib, but support it and preach it, and as a legitimate position that is suitable for the times and needed to uphold. Any questions about this issue? How you approach things? You go from the four madhahib, and then you make a choice. You don't circumvent all the tradition and you go right up to the khilaf al-ali, or the disagreement between the Sahaba or the Quran and the Sunnah. No. You go through the four madhahib, and then you choose from their positions what seems to be most consistent with the revelation, and you don't go outside of the four madhahib unless there is a momentum with, like a big body of scholars that upheld the position of a mujtahid imam, substantiated by the revelation. It's needed and it was never abandoned. Yes, sister.
So is it just in divorce where the consensus takes a higher precedent than the need, or is that generally in Sharia?
If there is a consensus, then we don't think beyond the consensus. We can't think beyond the consensus because the Ummah cannot agree on a misguidance. The Ummah does not agree on a misguidance. What is important is to verify that there was actually consensus. Here is the trick. Because many times scholars report a consensus when there is actually none, when there is actually no consensus. But once we have verified that there is a true consensus and we cannot disprove it, and there is no one ever that said otherwise, then in this case we don't think beyond the consensus. We'll have to accept it. But there is no consensus on an issue that puts alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protected His deen. There is no consensus on any issue that puts the ummah in hardship or haraj. There is not. And if you look at all of the rulings that put the ummah or part of the ummah or individuals within the ummah in haraj or hardship, you will find that this consensus, even if it was reported, is not a bona fide consensus. So it is just like doing our diligent work and looking for the correct position is important.